This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
It's been a while since I've caught up with good old Colin Cowherd. I heard that he is bringing up that the Browns need to hire Nick Saban and go ahead and draft that Arch Manning kid out of Texas who hasn't played very much football, and we don't really know if he's even going to want to come out this year. But Colin has not what he calls a conspiracy theory, but a reality of relations to share on us about what it is the Cleveland Browns are going. Let's see Colin Cowherd try to do his best Brian Windhurst.
But here is a story that I started last week that is not a conspiracy theory. It is what I would call a reality of relationship. Hey,
by the way, Colin Cowherd, brilliant marketer, right? Because you see how he brings up like this bullshit where he's like, here's a story specifically, right? Like as if somebody was breaking news on it and there was like real reporting. Here's a story that I started last week, and it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a reality of relations. The fuck does that mean? Honestly, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cuss, but hey, some things just like make you have to when you really think about it. But anyways, let's get back to Colin's reality of relations.
So Tony Rizzo talking about the Browns owner.
He's at Cleveland God. He's bringing up Tony Rizzo. That's that's his ace in the hole, dog. He's like, hey, you don't believe me? Oh, wait till you hear what Tony Rizzo has to say. No disrespect to Tony Rizzo, but we know how Rizzo's sources work.
Talk show host Jimmy Haslam and the Manning family and Arch Manning. Here you go.
I know it's nothing that they want to talk about, but I'm telling you the thirst that Jimmy Haslam has for Arch Manning is unmatched. The Haslams donated a ton of money to Tennessee. They have a relationship with Manning family. I don't think it's a coincidence they acquired a second first-round pick.
It is not. In fact.
Okay, so let's address like what Tony Rizzo is saying there, because it's not like 100% crazy, some of the dots he's trying to connect there. Is there a relationship between Jimmy Haslam and Peyton Manning? I haven't been able to find like actual evidence of a literal like relationship between these two, more than like they both are Tennessee alums. But I would assume with the kind of money that Jimmy Haslam throws at the University of Tennessee, that him and Peyton Manning have a pretty solid relationship. And because Jimmy Haslam owns an NFL team and he's very rich, he probably has a good relationship with the rest of the Manning family, much like pretty much every owner in the NFL, more than likely, because of the Manning Passing Academy, and they've just made themselves an institution in football over the last 20, 25 years or so. So, yeah, they have a relationship with the Manning family. Spoiler warning, any team that gets that number one pick is probably going to have a relationship with the Manning family. And this is why whenever people bring up, oh, if this team gets the number one overall pick, the Mannings aren't going to go for it. The Arch is not going to play for that team. The Mannings have carefully and delicately over the last 20 years curated positive relationships with almost every team in football. There's not a single team that Arch is going to go to that they're going to say no to. They've been curating these relationships specifically to make it easier for Arch Manning to go as high as possible in the draft whenever Arch Manning comes out in the draft. Also, the other piece that they throw into this, which I do think is true to a point, is that the Browns do have 2 first-round picks this year for a reason. That reason is to get a quarterback. Now, is that quarterback specifically in exclusively Arch Manning? Probably not, right? Arch is one of those guys where I'm not confident he's going to come out after this year. You look at the Manning family, they seem to encourage guys to stay in college longer more than have to leave. If you ever hear the Mannings talk about it, they value getting that extra playing experience. And since this isn't a family that needs to capitalize on money, and let's be real, Arch Manning is making a ton in NIL money already. So if money's not really a factor in him jumping to the NFL, like it would be for most people who need to jump to the NFL, which means he's probably going to play at least 2 seasons at Texas as the starter, which means more than likely 2027 class than 2026 class. So again, if the Browns were like razor focused on getting Arch Manning, you think they would know that, right? But anyways, yes, there is some reason to believe that the Browns are dead set at trying to get a quarterback in 2026. The specific things linking up with like Arch Manning, though, aren't as strong or as exclusive as Tony Rizzo or Colin Cowherd will try to make them seem.
This is the worst kept secret in the South. Haslam, Jimmy, owner of the Browns, huge SEC Tennessee booster, leans heavily on the Manning family. Very close to the Manning family. Yes, that's not make-believe. Arch Manning is part of the Manning family.
And you know what I find interesting about that like giant claim here, right? That he's saying that the Browns' decision-making, Jimmy Haslam's decision-making, leans heavily on the Manning family. And then usually Colin Cowherd is good for bringing up examples, right? If something is true and he really has something behind it, he will bring up examples of like, yeah, well, remember when you saw them at the owners meeting together and all of these other things? Like he would be able to place them. You notice there was a lack of that, right? Like he didn't back that claim up with anything or even attempt to, which indicates to me, because I've had to speak Colin Cowherd for the last like 5 years of my life, that this is filled with a lot of hot air, right? It's an assumption. And the assumption is exactly for the reasons that he's putting out there. Jimmy Haslam from the South. He likes Tennessee. Tennessee plays in the SEC. The Mannings are an SEC family, so they got to be connected somehow. I don't know if those ties are that tight, right? Like if Peyton was truly like the Manning family was truly like involved in a lot of decision making that the Browns have made, you think we trading for Deshaun Watson? Like, there's some very simple questions you got to ask here, right? Like, again, if the Manning family is so involved in the Cleveland Browns operations and with Jimmy Haslam, why have we never seen anybody in the Manning family in Cleveland during camp? Remember, the argument that Colin's making is not that Jimmy Haslam simply knows Peyton Manning and the Manning family. It's that Jimmy Haslam has a unique and close relationship with the Manning family. I've never seen a picture with Jimmy Haslam with anybody from the Manning family. You would think if this was that close of a relationship, there would be more evidence of that being the case, given that Jimmy Haslam's a famous, invisible person and the Mannings are famous, invisible people. Yet there's not much interaction there. And really the only connection we have from Jimmy Haslam to Peyton Manning is that. Jimmy Haslam to Peyton Manning. There's really nothing connecting him to Arch Manning. I mean, not Arch Manning, but Archie Manning or Cooper Manning, who are both in Louisiana. And there's really nothing connecting him to Eli Manning, who went to school in Mississippi and also resides in Louisiana. You know, the Mannings are more of a Louisiana family than a Tennessee family. So the connection there, I just don't buy is as strong as what this conspiracy requires it to be, because I feel like there would be more evidence of that relationship, but it seems as if like he's just hiding in the shadows in the background of Jimmy Haslam's public life because we never see them together, which is strange if he's involved apparently in Browns football decisions, that Jimmy has the same relationship that the other 32 owners have with the Manning family, which is a cordial and professional relationship, a familiar relationship, and one that there is a professional amount of trust in. But not so much trust to where like they're going to collude to force Arch Manning to Cleveland. I think there's really no evidence there other than, well, Jimmy likes SEC football and the Mannings are SEC football, and that's the line I'm going to draw there. Like, other than that, there's really nothing concrete there.
And this is where Nick Saban comes in. Saban is incredibly close to not only Jimmy Haslam, but Saban's close to the Manning family as well. And so Saban, if he could land, I'm told, a top quarterback like Harbaugh going to the Chargers for Herbert, he would take a phone call for the NFL. And there are two teams guaranteed to be awful this year in the NFL: Cleveland and the Saints. Nick Saban has coached in Cleveland with the Browns under the Belichick staff, and he coached at LSU. This is not a conspiracy theory.
What? It's completely a conspiracy theory, dude. It's a complete conspiracy theory. Like, again, nothing's backed up here with anything other than what Colin thinks is a connection. Part of the reason he singled out LSU and Cleveland, and he's like, oh my God, well, look at it. New Orleans and Cleveland, they're going to stink this year. And look at where Nick Saban is coached, once in Cleveland, once in LA. He chose Cleveland and New Orleans completely arbitrarily. Like, you cannot tell me that Cleveland and New Orleans are the front runners to be the worst two teams in the NFL roster-wise. Maybe New Orleans. I don't know what New Orleans got going on, but they're probably not going to be the worst team in the NFL, right? You can look at a lot of other teams and think that they can line up, get the number one. Like, it's not a two-man race for the number one overall pick this year. There's a lot of teams that can stink. He just singled out Cleveland, worked backwards, and added, well, you know, he coached at LSU, and, you know, he used to coach at Cleveland. Oh, connection. This is what conspiracy theories are, right? Or at least baseless conspiracy theories are people working from a conclusion, moving backwards and moving pieces in place in order to make those connections feel more unique than they actually are. Would Nick Saban come back to coach in the NFL? I don't know. It doesn't seem super unlikely. How old is Nick Saban, though? Can we jump on that one? Is he 70? Dog, Nick Saban's 73 years old. Like, you sure he coming back to the NFL? He's never seemed to enjoy coaching in the NFL. And I don't know about you, but if I were 73 years old and really rich and had the ability to still make a ton of money on TV, I wouldn't spend my final years doing a job in a league where I have hated working in the past. Doesn't seem like it make a ton of sense here, right? And I wouldn't do it for no rookie quarterback also. Like, he brings up, the Jim Harbaugh to Justin Herbert situation. That's not what he's talking about here, right? Justin Herbert was an all-pro quarterback by the time Jim Harbaugh took that job in LA. So even using Colin's example, why would drafting Arch Manning be the same thing as having Justin Herbert, who's already been developed? I think if Nick Saban wants to take a job in the NFL, it's because the Cincinnati Bengals fired Zach Taylor and hired him to coach Joe Burrow. That's the situation he takes over for, right? A real quarterback that's already been developed, that he doesn't have to waste whatever years he has left of being able to coach developing. He wants somebody ready-made. Hell, when he was in Miami, he wanted Drew Brees. He wasn't trying to develop a quarterback. So you think he's going to, at the tender age of 73, come out of retirement to develop a quarterback? Does that actually make sense when you actually think about it? Or because the name is Manning, we're just going to try to act like it makes sense? This shit don't make no sense. Let's continue.
Haslam's circle of trust, according to an article in The Athletic last year, is the Manning family and Jimmy Sexton and Bill Parcells. Sexton is Nick Saban's agent. So the Mannings are royalty in New Orleans. The Children's Hospital in New Orleans is called the Mannings Children's Hospital. And the Mannings are royalty to Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam also loves headlines. That's why he pushed to draft Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield. They were the most talked about quarterbacks. It's why he signed a ridiculous guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson. It would get discussed. So this is not a conspiracy theory.
It is a conspiracy theory. It absolutely is. I mean, like what he brought in there were like the article with the Athletic. I would have to read it to really know if it's saying what Colin wants it to say here. I highly doubt it. It's worth pointing out, I cannot find this Athletic article that Colin Cowherd is talking about. The most relevant thing is an article written by Jason Lloyd that got published by the New York Times that references a alleged affinity that Jimmy Haslam has for the Mannings. It's never specific whenever people bring up Jimmy Haslam and the Mannings. It's always the Mannings, which is weird, right? It's never Jimmy Haslam has a great relationship with Peyton Manning, which I would expect, or Jimmy Haslam has a great relationship with Archie Manning, which it's never singled out which Manning. They just talk about the Mannings as if all of them exist under one hive mind, which certainly is not the case. So, like, who in the Manning family is Jimmy Haslam close with? Because, again, there's no real evidence that these people hang out that much. Like, I've never seen pictures of Jimmy with anybody in the Manning family. I've never heard of the Manning family checking in on Jimmy during Browns camp, right? And, again, this is somebody that Colin is assuming has such a tight relationship that he is royalty to Jimmy Haslam. Royalty to Jimmy Haslam. But yet there's hardly any evidence other than assumed ties based on conference affiliation and school affiliation of the Haslams to the Mannings. There's not that many ties there, right? But I'm just supposed to just take it upon an article that he didn't source, an article that nobody can find, by the way, where this circle of trust is outlined. And I'm just supposed to take that as like gospel because Jimmy's from the South and it's real easy to believe that, hey, he knows the Mannings. I don't know. It feels like bullshit to me. I don't know if it feels like that to y'all. The other part to this that I feel like is being greatly overlooked, and it really shouldn't because Arch Manning plays football, is are we sure Arch is going to be like amazing this year? Like number one overall pick amazing? He's not necessarily the front runner in a lot of scouts' eyes to go number one. In fans' eyes, because his last name is Manning and the media has talked about him a lot, sure, everybody's like, that's going to be the number one overall pick. But if you talk to the people who actually have scouted this quarterback class, Arch Manning is not really in the conversation. Hell, most people don't even think Arch Manning is going to come out in this draft class, given that his history, the Manning family history, tends to lean towards staying in college for 4 years. Eli stayed for 4. Peyton stayed for 4. They both came back for their senior years. Arch Manning had plenty of time, if he really truly wanted to play and get out of college as soon as possible, to transfer out of Texas. He chose to stay at Texas and back up Quinn Ewers for the last couple of years. So this don't seem like a guy in a rush to me to declare for this year's draft. So, like, you think the Browns maneuvered all of this stuff, worked with the Manning family to maneuver getting this extra pick just to do it, and then Arch doesn't declare for the draft? Like, is that really why it doesn't make any sense, right? If Arch doesn't declare for this year's draft, or if Arch simply is not that good this year, which is a possibility, we really don't know how good Arch Manning is, by the way, which we really should have this conversation more often. Not saying that means Arch is going to be bad, but we got to at least acknowledge we don't know if the dude's going to be good. All of that makes this just seem like the silliest conspiracy theory of all time, because it's not like this is Andrew Luck going into his senior year and we know he's going to be the number one overall pick, right? This isn't like Trevor Lawrence going into his senior year and we know he's going to be the number one overall pick. This isn't like not Carson Wentz, but Carson Palmer was another guy who they knew was going to be the number 1 overall pick to start his season. But this isn't like Caleb Williams, starting his final year in college and everybody knowing he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. Arch is not in that situation, right? Arch has to play his way into being the number 1 overall pick. So I don't think teams are maneuvering behind the scenes right now, assuming that all of that's going to happen in order to get their hands on Arch Manning. Like if he proves it this year, maybe in 2027 we start to see this stuff happen. But there's nothing to suggest that it's going to be to that point right now because don't nobody know if Arch Manning going to be good. And I feel like we keep forgetting that part whenever we talk about Arch Manning. We just hear that last name Manning and assume that's Peyton Manning's kid and he's going to be just like Peyton Manning. This ain't Peyton's kid. This is Coop Manning's kid, right? Like this is not the same guarantee that people are assuming it's going to be. Like, yes, the kid's last name is Manning, but can we figure out if the dude can play yet? Like, can we give him a whole season before we start conspiring that not only is Arch Manning so good that teams are maneuvering behind the scenes in these shady backroom deals with the Mannings to get him, but also he's so damn good when he hasn't even played a full season yet, that Arch Manning is going to be so damn good that Nick Saban's going to have no choice but to come out to retirement and coach him. This is a lot, okay? This is a lot that we're putting on very, 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 very little support from an argument standpoint. Which makes it, by definition, Colin Cowherd, a conspiracy theory.
Okay. The circle of trust for Jimmy Haslam is the Manning family and Jimmy Sexton. Saban's, Manning, Haslam, South. That's why I've said. And
this is such a weak connection. He's like, yeah, Jimmy Haslam is from the South, and so are these people. And Jimmy Haslam is friends with people from the South. So that obviously means that they're going to get Nick Saban. Keep in mind, apparently Jimmy Haslam been trying to hire Nick Saban my entire life. Like since 2013, he bought the team. He's been trying to hire Nick Saban. I've seen 3 owners reportedly try to hire Nick Saban to the Cleveland Browns in my lifetime, right? Randy Lerner, Al Lerner, and now Jimmy Haslam. They've been trying to hire Nick Saban for 30 years? He's never come here. I don't think he's going to, I don't think we getting Nick Saban, dog. I don't know. Feels like bullshit to me, right? And Colin's whole reasoning for this is it's the South. They all in the South. As if the South is like one broom closet where everybody who does Southern football just lives and everybody knows each other. And everybody wants to work for each other. That don't make no damn sense, man. It's the loosest connection possible that he's drawing up.
Two teams in this league that are going to be bad. The Saints are going to be bad, and the Browns are going to be bad. Now, that doesn't mean Saban, if he doesn't take the job, it's all lost for Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Barry, the GM, more than capable. But this story is a poor...
No, that pause tells you everything, dog. He is freestyling this bullshit. This is not Colin's usual best, dog. He's kind of cooked.
Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Barry, the GM, more than capable.
No. Let me go back even further. I'm sorry. I didn't go back far enough. Look at this shit. That doesn't
mean Saban...
Ooh! Ooh, boy, I know he wish he could just shut it down and re-rack at that point. That is the look of a man who's like, ooh. Ooh.
If he doesn't take the job, it's all
I've watched
lost.
A lot of Colin Cowherd videos. I've never seen him pause them.
For Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Barry, the GM, more than capable. But this story is a poorly kept secret.
Wait. On one hand, the Browns are guaranteed to suck. because it's convenient in the narrative, right? Because he has the loose connection there with Nick Saban and Jimmy Sexton and the Browns, and Nick Saban used to coach for the Browns in the 90s, right? That's part of the reason he included the Browns and only the New Orleans Saints in here. Apparently, again, the number 1 and 2 picks in this year's draft are a 2-team race. Everybody else is going to be good except for the Browns and the Saints. Nobody else looks like they can suck this year, which I think is an interesting way to go about it. I think there are probably like 5 or 8 teams you can include in the conversation of teams that could likely very much suck. And I would argue that the Browns and the New Orleans Saints aren't the best teams to put in the front runner position on that. But I digress. We can move on from that. That's an opinion. But also keep in mind, he's saying the Browns are guaranteed to suck, but also realizes in the middle of this rant that another agenda he has going is that he is very much in support of the people in charge of the Cleveland Browns right now. He's pro these guys. So he's trying to balance these 2 incompatible plates for this conspiracy theory at once, and it just crashed on him, right? Because he's like, oh no, Andrew Berry's really good, and Kevin Stefanski's really good, and that's why they're guaranteed to suck, and Nick Saban's going to take their jobs. Huh? Again, man, this is not Colin's best work. I usually can't deconstruct Colin on the fly like this. Usually I got to watch the video. This is my first watch through. This is pretty like, Colin's not in regular season form at all, man. Like, this is not 2018 Gaslight Colin Cowherd right here. The Gaslight All-Star. This is Colin Cowherd on the Wizards, my man. He looked washed. Sorry, I hate to say it. Let's see if he keeps letting me down.
All in the NFL. All right, J-Mac.
No.
J-Mac, you are not a conspiracy.
Yeah. No, Joe. No, I'm not about to listen to J-Mac. We're good. I'm good on that. What do you guys think of that conspiracy theory? It seems like something that one of his producers probably stole off of a Reddit forum. And I'm going to be real. I bet if we find the Reddit post that they sourced that conspiracy theory off of, it probably makes it more cogent, coherent, and valid argument than what Colin Cowherd just made right there. So yeah, that's Colin Cowherd's conspiracy theory about the Browns purposely tanking this year to bring in Nick Saban and Arch Manning. Just the idea, again, think about the idea here. The Browns are so bad right now in Colin's mind that they are guaranteed to suck, despite the fact that in Colin's mind, they have a good GM and a good head coach. That Colin said all of that shit in that 3-minute clip. That's how bad he thinks the Cleveland Browns are. And he thinks Arch Manning is so good that a 73-year-old Nick Saban is going to jump out of retirement happily to come to Cleveland and coach this team that he just said was so bad, they're guaranteed to suck, simply because they have Arch Manning on it. And he's going to develop Arch Manning over the next couple of years and develop this Browns roster and get him to be a championship team. And let's say that takes like 2 years. At the tender age of 75 years old. That's what Colin Cowherd's conspiracy is. And the big meat and potatoes backing this up is that Jimmy Haslam's from the South. And so is Nick Saban, and so are the Mannings. So it has to happen, right? I mean, dog, I just think there's been better work by Colin Cowherd. This is Colin on the Wizards, dog. You got to step it up. The next time I watch a Colin Cowherd clip about the Cleveland Browns, I expect better work. This is not the man who compared Baker Mayfield to Robert Griffin III, right? This is not the man who spent a year and a half gaslighting us about Sam Darnold, and then the year Sam Darnold was good, said nothing about him. This is not the same guy. He's washed. He's cooked. I hate to say it. This ain't the Colin I remember. Y'all have a great day. Even better night. Peace.